catch a glimpse of tomorrow today. That's the headline for Draft Master Plan 2025, and that is what I'm going to talk about in this video today as well. Hi, my name is Sherwin. Welcome back to the channel. So the agenda for today, I will cover 4 points. The first will be the 7 points of focus for the Draft Master Plan. Second will be the 5 housing areas which I feel will be interesting in the next 5 to 10 years. And following on, third will be the 3 gateways of development which will drive our economic growth. And lastly will be the one piece of advice I hope you can take away from this video, or rather the advice I'll be giving you for those that are excited about the Draft Master Plan. So easy to follow: 7, 5, 3 and 1. Before I begin, why is there a need for master plan? A master plan has been since I think the birth of Singapore. So as we all know, right, Singapore is a small country, and with master plan it ensures efficient use of our limited land to balance competing needs. Singapore is so small, right? You take care of defense, housing, CBD, business hub, whatsoever. So how do we determine which is more important? So with this master plan, right, it outlines a clear long-term vision of how Singapore will be, and it helps to guide sustainable growth. On top of that, right, it offers certainty to investors, business and homeowners, right, when they are making their own planning and decision making. Okay, so then again, we have a master plan. Then why do we need to review every few years? The answer to this is quite simple, right? Because the world is changing. Nothing is constant, and we always have to adapt to the shifting needs of not just Singapore, but to align ourselves and keep ourselves competing with the world. Okay, so just a few examples. One recurring theme over the past few years has been our aging population. So population trend is something which our government have been trying to highlight. The other one, of course, is climate change, but it's not exclusive to Singapore, it's to the whole world as well. Okay, so there's 7 points of focus for our master plan. I think the previous one there's 4, and over here they actually expanded it into 7, and it can be broken down as follow. Okay, let me just talk about it briefly. I'm not going to dive too deep into the details where our government is planning, but more so that you have an idea, because this is just an outline, right, of where we are heading in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so with regards to the first 3 points of focus is to help to shape a happy, healthy city. So how do they define that? Is first live, okay, second is play, and thirdly is move. We live with live, right, is because we are a growing population as well. We're having more new citizens coming in to make Singapore more competitive in the global market. So we definitely need more housing options. So where will be the housing options in the next 5 to 15 years, or where are areas our government is going to develop? This is interesting for homeowners if they are choosing a place to live, or for those looking to speculate where is the best time to buy, where is the best place to buy a property. This might be something which they can use it to convince themselves. Okay, secondly is to make our community more inclusive, maybe to integrate more people together. And lastly, it's a senior living, which previously I talked about slightly. Singapore is an aging population, and how do we plan so there's less burden on the younger generation, or to make things easier for the elderly, because one day I'll grow as well. And just to share a quick side story, recently I just helped one of my clients sell off her 3-room HDB, and she moved into this community care apartment in Bukit Batok. Cannot remember the exact name of that place, but she's generally happier because I met her up for coffee session, and she said that it reduces her need to travel, because last time when she was staying in a 3-bedroom by herself, right, where every time she need to meet a friend, not saying that Singapore is not accessible, she had to travel quite a fair bit and for her age, she find that it's very tiring. And if things happen at home, there's no one to look out for her. When she moved into this apartment, she don't feel that lonely anymore. She wouldn't be worried if she fall down or whatsoever, because at least there'll be people looking out for her. Okay, so the second portion is the play, where they are building more community hubs and parks. I believe this is to bring everyone together. So integrated facilities are something which we can all look forward to. In the past there are a few, but I feel moving forward we have more and more of these lah. And one thing which our government like to say a lot, emphasize a lot, is this 10 minutes walk. So in the near future, I think, or soon, right, all the households in Singapore will be within a 10 minutes walk to the park. Talking about 10 minutes walk, it brings me to the third point. So by 2030, right, 8 out of 10 households in Singapore will be within 10 minutes walking distance to an MRT station, which is fantastic. But my question will be, then will it drive prices? Okay, will it drive the demand in prime area outwards, because accessibility is not as compromised already? Someone that wants to stay only the Queenstown Redhill area, but the prices are too high. Now you might consider somewhere further out, maybe like the Choa Chu Kang, Bukit Panjang area, because the time taken for you to travel to town is not what it used to be. Okay, just a food for thought. So the fourth point of focus, right, is enabling sustainable growth. And a few pointers mentioned here. The first will be decentralizing. So there will be more jobs and less commuting for Singapore. And a few areas which they are pushing out is like the Woodlands Regional Centre, Changi Terminal 5, and Tuas Port and PSA Hub. On top of that, right, they are actually revitalizing town centre like Bishan. And one of the main focus which they are trying to do a lot is rejuvenating the city centre, because if you have been working in the CBD or you stay near the CBD, you realize, right, downtown usually during the weekends is like a dead town and housing prices there hasn't been that fantastic. So many people that bought like 5-10 years ago with the promise of it being revitalized, maybe, just maybe, you will see your home prices go up in the near future. But of course, all these are just in talks, and we really do need to see how it pans out in the next few years and see whether the investors there or the homeowners there can benefit from it. Okay, and that is the fourth point of focus. The fifth point of focus is something more global. It's strengthening urban resilience. And the common theme, not just for Singapore but throughout the world, is climate change. So over here, they actually talk about the whole climate adaptation strategies they have for Singapore. And this falls under the sustainability portion. And with rising sea levels and such, right, how will housing be near the sea be affected? Of course, it's very nice to have a sea view, but then again, is it worrying? I feel not so, because our government is quite forward planning. So the last 2 points of focus is all about preserving our nature and heritage, which is under the cherish and steward portion. We'll not go too much onto it because I don't believe it will add too much value to it unless you're holding on to the shop houses. But to summarize this, it's more of conservation of areas, coming up with more identity corridors, like in the past railway corridor. Currently, they are adding a few more, like the historic East, Inner Ring, Kallang River, and so on. So you can have a read up on it. They also have exhibition going around Singapore if you don't know, and you have time, you can go and look at it, because the planning of the whole entire master plan is really very interesting to look at. Maybe it doesn't affect your property price that much, but actually not everything is about pricing. It's more about livability, right? Because you also own a part of Singapore, then you're Singaporean. Okay, so I've covered the 7 points of focus. Next will be the 5 housing areas, which I think will be very interesting to look at. With no particular order, these are the 5 housing areas. The Bukit Timah Turf City, estimated, okay, I think this will be the biggest plot of public and private developments for the next 5 to 10 years, up to 20,000 housing, followed by the race course. Both of these used to be ma chang, where people race their horses, and Pearl Hill, then the former Keppel Golf Course, and lastly the Dover Medway. The first 4 I am not very surprised because they have been in the talks for some time. Last one is very interesting, the Dover Medway, because if you know, the area at the Greater One North have basically been a relatively quiet area, and the housing there, property prices did not appreciate that much. But you can see the 6,000 public and private housing is just phase 1. And side note, Lindenwood price really look very attractive now when it starts from 2001. So if you have time and you really want to invest, maybe this is an area you can look at for rental yield. Capital appreciation may be the next 10 years when the housing starts to come in. Okay, so briefly into the different areas. Bukit Timah area, as we all know, is a prime area. The HDB prices there will not be cheap, and they will fall under the prime location housing. I'm not sure about lease term. Maybe they'll try the 60 years lease, but definitely if you buy the area, I wouldn't say you hit a jackpot because there's clawback whatsoever, but it will be a very accessible area in a mature estate. Race course site is interesting for Kranji. I will say this is the second largest housing development for the next 5 to 10 years to come. And why it's interesting? Because Kranji is relatively ulu to Singaporeans, and people do not want to stay there. But with decentralization happening and with the Woodlands regional hub, it's interesting to see that our government is building more residential in that area to support the business activity. And thirdly will be Pearl Hill. Similarly, it's a very mature estate where our government is putting in new housing supply. If you were to look at the area itself, actually all Singaporeans will know it's just up a hill and MRT is just at your doorstep, which is really very, very convenient. Not so much of the private property prices, because we all know how the prices will be like, but more so of how our government is going to sell that area and what are the terms and conditions when it comes to buying and selling. Okay, because I believe it will be oversubscribed, but whether the owner will make like a windfall from that property itself, from BTO, we will need to see. Maybe it will be the first time we see a 2.5 million HDB being sold. Okay, and lastly will be the Keppel Golf Course area. Recently I've been doing a few rental transactions at the Reflection area. Pretty sucky because of the construction going on. So in the past, there's one side of Reflection at Keppel Bay, if you all are familiar, that faces the golf course, but now the golf course is off, and in the next few years there are more and more people trying to sell because the view is gone, and they're trying to sell before the houses that are being built up. So we've definitely faced a lot of challenges, not in terms of selling but in terms of renting as well. But the interesting side, because then you have a few HDB that have an unblocked sea view. Okay, we might have. Same thing, we don't know about the prices that the government is going to launch. Definitely not cheap, and there'll be strict criteria when it comes to selling of your property in the area. So a few notable mentions on top of the 5 housing areas which are highlighted will be firstly the Newton area. Why I say notable? Because this 5,000 housing in Newton, right, is all private housing. And one thing which I personally will be quite interested to see in the future is whether our government lift the 60% ABSD on in foreigners, because if you notice for the past like few years, right, foreigners buying in Singapore is almost at 0% or very negligible amount. So for CCR area, based on history, generally it has been more foreigners investing in the area. Of course, people can argue that there's a rejuvenation of CCR and OCR prices are catching up. People might want to prefer CCR. So these are points which are interesting to see, and we will see how Singaporeans react to it with the next few 6 CCR launches in the second half of 2025. Secondly will be Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant is in a relatively convenient area, but not as accessible at the moment because I stay near there, so I know. But they're all public housing, so it'll be interesting to see how it drives up the private property prices in the area when it MOP, because it's really very convenient, right? For Mount Pleasant, it's just like right smack between Novena, Thomson and Toa Payoh. Okay, and lastly will be Media Police. Media Police itself is a part of Greater One North, so if you were to add the Dover Medway and Media Police supply all together, right, it's around 11,000. So it'll be very interesting to see how our government plan to play around this area And personally, for me, with regards to Greater One North and CCR, I feel Greater One North might have a bigger potential in terms of capital appreciation as compared to the CCR area. But that's just my personal opinion, because I feel Greater One North feels neat for people that are looking to upgrade and staying near business, and on top of that, the new MRT coming up in the area as well, and there's a lot of HDB upgraders and local demand driving it, right? Whereas for areas like Newton, Patterson, which they are developing or having more private housing, it's still the same old issue, right? It's still private houses within a prime area where public housing have been relatively hard to crack So I don't think you'll ever see HDB in Orchard or River Valley, at least not in the foreseeable future Of course, there are a few major areas which are still under study, so it doesn't fall under my 5 housing area highlight. They are the Marina South, Paya Lebar Air Base, and the Sembawang Shipyard. These 3 areas, it will definitely come. It will definitely be realized. It's just a matter of when, because Marina South, Paya Lebar Air Base, and Sembawang Shipyard, they have been talking about it for quite some time already. So Paya Lebar Air Base, if I'm not wrong, they will totally shift out by 2030. And at that point of time when they fully shift out, right, it'll be interesting to note, because it will also lift up the height restriction. So the buildings there will definitely be higher if our government were to start selling land there. But a ripple effect is the older apartments there, if they try to en bloc, this might be a bargaining chip for them because right now maybe they can only build to 10 to 12 stories, but once it's lifted, they can try to appeal for a revise of the plot ratio, and the developer can build more unit, and developers might see this as an opportunity and they are willing to pay a premium for that. So these are the 5 housing areas which I think personally for me will be interesting, and the 3 under study area, which is good to take note. But whether you want to straight away dive head into the area first, maybe if you want to play the long-term game which is the 10 to 20 years down the road. Moving on, we have the 3 gateway to the future, or rather 3 gateway of the future. One thing which I'm very impressed with the master planning is, if you look at the master planning since the beginning till now, right, the team, there isn't like a major shift away from what our government vision is since the start. If you look at decentralization, it has actually started since 1991, and at that point of time I'm only just 1 year old and what they wanted, or what they have a vision to do right, they gradually plan towards that. And as of 2025, right, and all the way to 2030 and 2035, the areas of focus, or rather the 3 gateways of economic developments, is always these 3 areas. So I will start off with the western area, which I believe a lot of opportunities are there. They have the Jurong Lake District, Jurong Innovation District, and Tuas Port. And secondly, we have the Eastern Gateway, where our Changi Airport is, a business park and the aviation. And lastly is the Northern Gateway, where we have the Woodlands Regional Centre. So all 3 have equal opportunities, and these 3 areas have been talked about in the media for like the longest time. And our government is rather committed to building up these 3 areas. Maybe they are not at their full capacity now. I think for Changi, it is slightly more developed because they're coming out with Terminal 5, but they already have Terminal 4 maybe 70%. Western and Northern Gateway, there's a longer runway, especially the Western Gateway, if you look at how massive the entire area is going to be. So if you were to focus, and if you ask me where would I buy a property to stay in that will appreciate the most, without speculating, just by following the government plan, I don't want to flip, I just want to buy in a place that I stay 20 years. You can look towards the Northern area or the Western area. Okay, I have a whole video talking about Tengah so if you want, you can go and look at my video highlights. Of course, our government is not neglecting the mature estate as well. where they try to revitalize or rejuvenate the local hubs, like in recent years, the Bishan hub and the Tampines hub. And one core focus, like which I mentioned earlier on, is the revitalization of our downtown area. And that's it for the video. I'll end off with this one advice. Before you go out there feeling excited to make a property purchase, thinking that you can make money based on the draft master plan, always remember this: story sells, but your real estate profit really depends on the timing of the transformation happening and its true impact. Don't get sold so easily. Just look into the past example. For example, Pongo planning started in 1990s, but for those owners that enter in 2000 to 2003, they actually lost money. The first owner that actually made money from Pongo transformation was actually around 2006 to 2007. Same for those property at the Marina area, for example, Vion Shenton, Marina 1. Did they make a lot of money? No. If you look at the profitability of those projects, it's actually very minimal, and some of them actually lost money because whatever was being discussed in the parliament or set up in plans, it's just not being realized yet. So are you buying too early into the transformation or buying too late into the transformation? This is the question you have to ask yourself. And for the draft master plan, more often than not, most people will be investing too early before they can even reap the profit. So that's it. Remember to like, share and subscribe to my video.